Welcome to the online workshop that we're going to do on hip mobility and glute max activation. So if that's not what you're looking for, I may have sent you the wrong video, I apologize. But if this is right what you're looking for here, I'm very happy that you guys came. I was super excited about it because this is something I'm very passionate about of just helping people learn A, how to take care of their own bodies, and B, how to use their bodies more efficiently, especially for distance runners, for CrossFit athletes, just the active person. If you could turn on your glute a little bit more, you're gonna stabilize your low back, you're gonna improve your athletic performance, and just overall just feel better and just be able to be a more functional human being, which I think is a goal that a lot of people actually have. So we're gonna go over 4 exercises, the ones that we went over during the workshop. That way you guys don't have to wrap your heads and like, oh, which one did I do? Which one was that? So I'm excited about this, and all you're gonna need, lacrosse ball. You don't need it, but it's just a great place to start. The foam roller, I call it a pool toy. It's not that it's bad. It's just it's if you roll over something with the roller and you're like, oh god, that's super right. If I'm laying on my side, rolling on this on my glute here, which we're gonna get to in a second, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't handle it. With the foam roller, that's a sign. Okay, start with the foam roller, totally fine, but we want to progress at least to the lacrosse ball, and even maybe having something as aggressive as a barbell that's essentially metal, and there's no give at all to the barbell. But lacrosse ball is a great way it's a great place to start, and also a great place to stay, just because it's essentially there's a ball bearing in the middle of it, surrounded by this hard rubber. So lacrosse ball, if you have a tennis ball, spiky ball, or something similar to this, it's going to do in a pinch. But I highly recommend spend the $5, buy 2 of them on Amazon. You're going to lose one. The dog, the kids, the couch will take it. One of those 3. One of them typically happens. So we're going to start actually with a stretch. We're going to put the ball down, and this is a great one just to target the glutes, target the rotators of the glutes, and also get a little bit of the sciatic nerve. So it's called half pigeon. If you've done yoga before, I'm sure you've heard of it. I don't know why it's called half pigeon, but and if you can't do this, there's a progression. So please bear with me if during a workshop you're like, oh, it didn't really work out too well, Matt. So we're gonna get into this lunge position and get my pool toy out of the way. Get this lunge position here. And my goal is, if my right leg's in front, kick it out to the side. We're gonna come on down right in this position here. And if this is like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing in the world, then hang out right here. or we can regress it if we need to. But the goal is try not to let that foot dive down. If you can't even get here without the foot being in the leg, the knee being in this 90-degree angle, you can come off totally fine and then come into it. But I want to try and keep that foot here. I put my hand right on it, and I'm just searching left and right. I'm trying to find, hey, where am I most tender? Where can I find these corners? And for me, it's a little bit more on my outside when I kick my hips out this way. So I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, right there. And then once you find that spot, just drop right into it. You can lean forward if you'd like. As long as your hips are going down, totally fine. It's like, oh my gosh, this is super intense. And the goal is holding it for 2 minutes. That is the minimum effective dose. Is there a research article that says that? There probably is. But just from my experience and from other therapists that I collaborate with, 2 minutes has been shown to say, hey, or we've noticed that this is where we actually see some tissue lengthening. There is research on that as well. But also just holding it for longer periods of time has more benefits to it, but at least 2 minutes is where we see a good amount of change in tissue length. And also we are breaking up some adhesions. Not the best way to do it. We're going to use the lacrosse ball for that, but just a fantastic way that if we spend 2 minutes on here, we can start to incorporate, hey, we're going to start stretching out some of these tissues. And if you'd like, a great way to help turn the nervous system off, because that's a reason why we may be lacking mobility, is our nervous system, is we can actually push into the ground here. I'm actually activating my glute and I'm pushing, 2, 3, 4, 5, relax, 10 seconds, try and sink a little bit deeper into that, 9, 10, and then 5 more seconds. You don't have to do the Valsalva like me, 3, 4, 5, and then back right off, and relax, just moving side to side, trying to find more spots. So a couple different ways you can progress that. Please feel free to rewind and figure that out, or try and kind of dig through it and find out which one works best for you. Essentially, holding it is going to improve muscle length. If you start to add the contract, relax, you'll start to play with your nervous system and start to ramp down that nervous system, which can actually be a huge factor of limiting our mobility. Is this nervous system, essentially our brain and spinal cord, are sending out excessive signals of activate, 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 just because that muscle's overused. So just a great one that we can start with was pigeon. And now what we're going to do, we're going to attack the glute itself, and attack it in a way where now we're going to start to break up some adhesions. So whip out grab the ball here, whip out your lacrosse ball, and we're just going to sit right on it, right? So find your sitting bone, start there, and then roll the ball backwards. So I'm gonna move forward so the ball rolls backwards, and just search for spots, right? So there's no magic way to do this. As long as you're behind the sitting bone, right? As long as you're moved forwards and the ball is behind you now, just trying to find all these different areas. Hey, where am I most tender? Sometimes in my case, it's kind of getting wrapped up in my hoodie. You might have to adjust your clothes a little bit. But just trying to find, hey, where am I most tender? And I am not feeling much here. See at the high, no, not even the high part. Sometimes too, if you go really far back this way, and make sure your shoulders are okay with that. If we're really coming back here, you're gonna get the high glute, and the high part of that glute max is a very common spot that runners tend to get a lot of just matted down tissues. And when that happens, you can throw off some low back mechanics and also just turn the glute off. So now what I wanna do, if you have found a spot or if you're still looking, prop the leg here, and this is very similar to, I'll go over it in a second, the modified version of our pigeon stretch. So if we're here, we're putting on some stretch, and now we're hitting it. Oh my gosh, I'm a little bit tender here, but you might be a little bit more than me. So a couple options we have: A, 2 minutes just moving around. B, we can start to move this leg up and start to attack it this way, which is actually, I prefer this method. Like, oh, that's the spot, and then just spending a minute here. You can split it up a couple different ways. You can do 40 seconds one spot, 40 seconds another spot. So you can really mix this one up and really attack these specific areas, especially the high part of the glute. So if you sit on it, you're really gonna have to roll yourself back a little bit, almost on your, actually it's probably better to be on your elbows here to attack this high part of the glute, and don't be afraid to get on the outside. And mine's surprisingly not bad. I've been doing a good job apparently. Okay, I skipped the one, I wanna go back. Modified pigeon, if you have issues with your pigeon stretch, so if you can't get into that position, the first one we did, what we're gonna do is, any chair will do, I'm gonna stretch out my right side, cross that leg over, hand here. If you already feel it here, then hang out there, or if it's intense. If it's not that intense, keep that there, don't let it come up. We're gonna lean forward, and this is a fantastic way to then hit the glute. Essentially very similar to how we were doing it on the ground, just a little bit modified so it's more comfortable. If you're lacking that mobility, no problem. There's ways to regress and progress any of these exercises. That's just one way to do it. Okay, so we've done the glute, we've stretched out the glute, and we've broken up some adhesions. So why does the glute have these issues in the first place? And that's a great question, because we need to look at, well, what are we doing all day? Right, that should be question number one. And a lot of the times we're sitting down, we're not moving, we're not having a daily routine for mobility. And I want you guys to take your thumb right now. You can kind of see mine's actually whiter than it should be, but it should be a kind of pinkish sort of hue to the nail bed there. If you push on it, hold a couple seconds, let go, what'd you see? Right, what you should have seen was, hey, when you moved your thumb out of the way, it was relatively white, and then very quickly the blood flow came back. Imagine that, essentially, if you're sitting down all day on your butt, like most of us are, especially seated in a car or on a plane, we're doing the same exact thing to our glute, right? The one part of the glute where that sitting bone is. But if we do this constantly and constantly and constantly, right, blood has so much nutrition and so much oxygen and so much just good stuff that we need, that if we can continually occlude or block off this blood flow, our glute max is just automatically going to become like beef jerky. And imagine a rare or a medium rare steak versus a beef jerky. I'll take for tissue quality, I do like beef jerky, but for tissue quality, I'm going to take the rare steak all day. Just comparing them, the beef jerky is going to be dry. Try and stretch it, it's not going to stretch very well. Or the steak, yes, it might be tough and tender, but it's actually going to stretch and taste good too, but it's just a better quality tissue than the beef jerky is. Okay, I don't want beef jerky as glutes. I want your butt to be, hey, I want it to be this rare or medium rare steak. So that's why we're doing this, is because of all the sitting, and not even just the sitting, but just the inactivity that we are doing, not giving that glute as much blood as it deserves. That's what kind of starts to make it, hey, break down, get shortened, get tight. Adhesions, whether that's scar tissue or not, it could be fascia, it could be the muscle, the tendon, whatever's going on there, and that decrease of blood flow. So with the lacrosse ball, we're breaking up adhesions, we're improving blood flow, actually causing a little bit of inflammation, because that is the first stage of healing that we need. So that's why, whether it's the lacrosse ball, whether it's the barbell, that's why we're doing this. So I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much. The next one we're going to go into is one for the side of the glute med, that has implications when we're running. The glute max does this as well, arguably, but but it prevents our hip from dropping. So I'll give you guys a quick demonstration here. So if I'm running, what essentially this muscle does, kind of kicking my leg out to the side. If I am stationary on this leg, so essentially it does this, but now that I can't really kick my leg out because I'm stationary here, it controls my pelvis's position in space. So when I'm here, it actually, when I contract it, I'm hiking my hip up. It looks like this hip's doing the work, but this one's actually hiking it up towards the ceiling because I am essentially it's called abduction. I'm moving my leg out to the side. So this has implications when we're running, because if I'm here and I step and I'm super weak here, there's other reasons why this happens, but we don't want this hip drop to happen. And very commonly you'll see this knee cave in, foot pronate out. So this can be a contributing factor. There's much more than just this, but we need to be aware, hey, glute med has a lot of implications on our running. And also just stabilizing that low back. If you're trying to do some kind of a barbell lift, CrossFit activity, lifting weights, we need this glute med to be firing and also to have very good tissue quality. So what we're gonna do is grab our lacrosse ball and we're gonna lay right on our side. And the goal is place the ball right on your hip bone. You're gonna go down and then all the way out to the side. Essentially you want that ball facing straight away from you, or at I guess if this is straight up 90 degrees to the vertical plane here, sagittal plane, whatever you want to call it. And then you're just gonna lay right on top of it. Let me get a little better in the frame here. Pool toy is in the way. There we go. So laying right here, and this is one I've had issues with. When I started doing this, it was like a rope. Okay. So if yours feels ropey and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. A, it's a sign we need to work on this. B, if it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta get off it. You can by all means get off it, but try to relax the leg. Just try and relax into it. Okay, this is your nervous system's ramping up, and right, fight or flight mode. You're trying to get off this thing. Just relax. Try and hang on to it. If you can't do it, use the roller. Totally fine. But relax into it for 30 seconds, and then we're gonna start moving around, really hitting this guy, just starting to release it. And guys, 2 minutes. All I'm doing is I'm using my leg on the top here to really control this motion. And what we can do. Somebody in the workshop actually thought of this. She did a fantastic job. Is you're gonna be here, ball there, roll down, roll to the side, and now that I put my leg on my pool toy here, I have actually created a little bit. I put it under some slack, some stretch, kind of what we were doing with the pigeon stretch, and now it's like, oh my gosh, I can really get in here and hit this glute med. It's just another way we can aggressively more attack it. And again, this has great implications with stabilizing the low back, running form, and just overall athletic performance as well, of having longevity and having the ability to stay injury-free. So we went over pigeon, the stretch, the glute max release. We went over the glute medius release. We're gonna put the ball away now. We don't need it anymore. We're gonna go over not a stretch for a muscle, but actually a stretch for the joint capsule. And a great way to explain this is, the joint capsule is, if I can figure out how to use the shirt, fist in the shirt here, this is the head of my femur, and this is the socket in my, called the acetabulum, on my pelvis. So it sits, bam, it's right in there, and this rolls and glides, a very, very stable joint, very similar to our shoulder, but the shoulder's not as stable, it's more for mobility. But this is a very, very stable joint, the hip joint, and essentially it rolls. So this is my kneecap here, right? If I'm coming up this way and then coming out to the side, behind me, there's all these motions, rotation. I have 3 degrees of motion. It's a fantastic joint for stability because it has to support our body. Imagine squatting a whole lot of weight. This hip joint has to do its job. But if what happens with sitting is, if we sit down a lot of times we actually don't sit on our sitting bones. In fact, my sitting bones right now are right on my heel. A lot of times we'll actually sit on our hamstrings, right? If I'm sitting in a kind of an awkward chair here, sitting in my hamstrings, sometimes it's like a lawn chair, they kind of curve up like that. And those hamstrings, what's going on here is, now a lot of my force, as this is my femur, is coming up this way. It's actually jamming the head of my femur into my acetabulum, and it gets stuck there. And the reason why it gets stuck there is we have this joint capsule. If you don't know what a joint capsule is, think about it's on the head of my femur, enveloping the whole bone, and if it's prematurely tight, it's going to limit my ability to roll and glide, especially if it's been stuck up in this position for a while. So imagine a crab. If you had king crab, snow crab, blue crab, whatever kind of crab you've had, they have an exoskeleton. Okay, who cares about exoskeletons? What's great about this is we can actually see their joint capsule, because our capsule connects bone to bone. In a crab, it does the same thing, but it's on the outside. You can actually see it. And this is when you break the joint, right? When you're breaking, imagine the leg joints, the claws, legs they have. Right, I'm sure you've seen it, you just haven't noticed that that's what it is, but that is what a joint capsule is. And this is why people have such issues with knee replacements and hip replacements, getting their range of motion back, because yes, there's scar tissue in the muscles, the glute, the hip flexors, and around the knee, the quadriceps, where they cut in, but there's also the joint capsule that gets very scarred down and gives people so many issues with this mobility. So that's what the joint capsule is. And we're gonna release it in the hip. It's stuck up here. We gotta bring it back down. So what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna be on the ground. This is probably the hardest one to get, so I want you guys to, you can please replay this as many times as you need to. But we're gonna be here. I have one knee on the ground. The other knee is gonna be behind me. I'll show you on the side here. It's probably gonna be easier. I want all my weight through this knee. I am trying to drive my weight through it. So I can actually contract my glute and just bam, push all that weight into the ground. I'm trying to imagine you're on your worst enemy's or your best friend's stomach, and you're trying to knee him in the stomach. Maybe not your best friend, maybe your worst enemy. Whoever you want to do. Just driving that knee into the ground. You should feel a little bit in the glute, nothing crazy. And the goal is, I'm going to lean back. My right foot here, it's on the ground for stability, or it's on the ground for balance. I don't want too much force through the foot, still want driving into the ground through that knee. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me a good amount of force trying to shear the head of that femur back down rather than have it stuck up in there. Especially when we're coming this way. So all this force is getting directed back, 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 back. So the farther back you get, the better you're going to be able to shear it back down. So this is the goal here. So it's a great way to stretch out joint capsules as well. Shear them, right? Put some force onto them, push on them. It's a little bit harder to understand because it's harder to feel it, harder to understand, and we can't really see it, right? We can see, hey, our muscle's flexing, I feel like I'm stretching it. Joint capsules are a little bit different because we don't have that feedback as well as we do with muscles and other connective tissue. So that is the goal, guys. So 2 minutes on that one, just dropping back. You can play around too with your foot position. I'll show you from the back. We're here. I can kick my foot in, lock it in and do this. This is kind of like the pigeon, but it's a great way to hit the glutes and the joint capsule. You can kick it out to the side, do the same things. This is an option you have to play around as you're moving backwards, but don't be afraid to do that. Rule of thumb, if it's tender, it's tight, you probably have to spend some time on it, so spend 2 minutes doing it. But guys, I appreciate you listening to this. This is probably, I don't know, probably 10-ish minutes long, but doing these 4 exercises, giving 10 minutes a day, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, you're going to see some improvements in the long term if you do them consistently and diligently, okay? If you just do these once and then never do them again, you might see some short-term improvements, but if you don't change your habits, your lifestyle, or incorporate these into it, you're going to go back to how you were. So please just spend 10 minutes a day, whether you work with me or not. These are going to help you guys out. But I really enjoyed the workshop. Appreciate you guys coming on. But if anybody does have anything going on, you're like, hey Matt, I know I have something going on. Thanks for helping me out, but I want to take that next step and learn how to treat it on my own for good. Guys, please reach out. I have a deal going on of half off an eval with me, a week out from the workshop. So if you reach out then, I'll honor the half off the eval. We can figure out if you're a good fit for me, if I'm a good fit for you. And if I'm not, sometimes I'm not, I'll say, hey, I'll try and point you in the right direction to give you the care that you need. But guys, thanks again. I'll catch you next time.